It is not every day that you get to talk to one of your favorite musicians of all time. John Fogerty, good morning and welcome.
Hello, Jim.
It is an absolute honor to have you here. I want to start with you, John. You have a brand new album that's out, Legacy, the Creedence Clearwater Revival years. It is 20 Creedence songs re-recorded by you and your sons. I want to go back to 1969. Creedence at that point, John, is my favorite band. I'm just learning how to play the guitar. The songs are relatively easy for a novice to play. Like, this is pretty cool. I get an album in January. I get an album in the summer. I get an album in the fall. This is my favorite band. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Christmas coming 3 times a year. How did you get that kind of output in that short amount of time?
Well, I had determined and sort of commissioned myself to do that. At 68, we'd had the big hit record Susie Q. And at the end of that year, I had sort of taken stock of myself and my band's position, decided, well, now I'm a one-hit wonder. What do I do? The idea was we didn't have all those trappings that big artists usually have, like a big label behind us. We were on a little dinky jazz label. Didn't have a manager, didn't have a publicist, all that sort of stuff. Basically had one roadie, and I determined I'm going to have to do this with my music. And that's what I did. I just started writing songs, forcing myself to have a complete vision of what the band should look like and sound like. And that's kind of what I pursued, especially in that year, 1969.
And there was even more, in addition to the albums, you're on American Bandstand a couple of times, you're on Ed Sullivan a couple of times, and you're on Woodstock as well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you were the first band to get signed to play at Woodstock. So you've got the hipness of being on FM radio. And while other acts on the Woodstock bill had some AM radio play, they certainly didn't have the pull that you guys had on AM radio. And now you're on Woodstock. John, not a lot of people, if any, accomplished what you guys did in such a short amount of time.
Well, you're right. I was very fortunate to, young people are precocious, right? They're just full of fire and willpower and all the rest. But it's amazing to actually then go out and do what you say you're going to do. And, I'm very respectful of that situation. I wanted to do these things, and somehow I forced my brain to figure out how to do them, and it got done. I mean, now yeah, that's pretty cool, but it's also pretty lucky, I guess you'd say. I was just a very lucky individual.
When you went to put together this new legacy collection, how did you go about choosing some of the songs? Because all the hits are there, but you've got some really cool, deeper tracks as well.
Well, of course, I think the hits choose themselves. And then the idea was the interest, the viability of the few other tracks that we would need. Porterville was special to me because that was really when I really first started writing, kind of in my more mature way of doing it, or more developed way of doing it. And I was still on active duty in the Army when that happened. Wanted to do that on this album. I thought it turned out pretty good, actually. Uh, and then bootleg was always fun because it was such a rhythmic thing. It's just a nice, band show off, you might say. Wrote a song for everyone. I think was pretty well known, especially in those times, and was part of those times in a big way. So that's how these songs that may be less familiar than perhaps Proud Mary, that's how they came to be.
You mentioned Porterville, and among the early songs on your first couple of records, that's probably my favorite deep Creedence track. I was so glad to see that this was on there, John.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, it has a special place for me too.
You were recently inducted by Bruce Springsteen into the American Music Honors. And as I was looking at what you guys did in 69, and even the 2 albums that came out after that period of time, Bruce just released 7 albums of material that had been sitting around. You're like, What was he thinking leaving these songs, for somebody else to find years and years later? Do you have a similar situation with a backlog of material that you have written?
The answer would be no, I don't. Work on it day to day, but no, I don't have a big vault full of, as of yet, unreleased material.
One of the things that Bruce did say about you, and I thought it was so important, is that your music is pure and universal. If you want to define American music, I think your music, whether it's your solo work or with Creedence Clearwater Revival, just reeks of Americana, if you will. And I love the fact that you went with legacy as the first word in the title because it's your musical legacy, it's Creedence's musical legacy, and also recording with your sons in a way, it's their musical legacy, in addition to it being the soundtrack to all of our lives. And that's really, I guess, more of a comment than it is a question, John. But I thought that word legacy captured so much.
Well, you may not be surprised to learn that actually legacy is something that my wife, Julie, came up with. She's a force of nature. I think this album exists because Julie willed it. She really thought it would be a great idea. As a matter of fact, she had a vision years ago, is the way I tell it. And she told me actually, and her vision was full of joy. And part of that vision was me re-recording these songs. And then she kept working. She one day she told me, I think the name of the album should be Legacy. And I just lit up. I said, that's perfect. Of course. And here we are.
Yeah, the title does capture it perfectly. One kind of trivia question, if you will. I've always wondered, he fell off of a tractor. He was going to get religion. Who was Jodie?
Well, I first learned of Jodie when I was in the Army, but I guess Jodie has been hanging around American culture for a long time. He's just sort of this, he's that guy that's sneaking in the window when you come out of town. That's supposed to be the fearful way they use it in the military. You're marching along and, somebody's talking about this Jodie character uh, going back home and visiting your girlfriend, that sort of thing. So I kind of adopted him as a musical character, and sure loved thinking about him. I think he appears in a couple, maybe three of my songs.
Yeah, there's at least two that I can think of off the top of my head between the falling off of a tractor and getting religion. John Fogerty with us here at 105.5 WDHA. What was it like for you going back to re-record these songs? I know you weren't able to release them in the original version because of whatever the contractual thing is, but going back and revisiting these and making them your own again, what was that like for you?
Oh, this was really a joyful, blessed experience, in so many ways that I never really predicted. At first, I think when Julie talked about maybe doing this project, a few years ago, I was mostly kind of scared of it, kind of, wow, how would you do that? I mean, there's so many little just spontaneous things. How do you do that? Um, and there was a lot more I had to learn. You can say you're going to do something, but the actual doing becomes much more complicated. But I rolled up my sleeves and, jumped in with both feet at some point. It didn't quite start that way, but at some point into it, I realized it was going to take a lot more effort. And one of the things I'll probably, because you don't have a lot of time, I'll just stop with that part. I believe that my wife, Julie, must have known that. I mean, I have a sense of humor about her mindset. He's gonna gripe a little, but then it'll kick in. He'll get competitive, and then he'll do it because that's kind of what happened. And I like to think that she probably knew this all along.
The album is called Legacy, the Creedence Clearwater Revival years, 20 tracks, all the hits, and some really cool deep tracks as well. John Fogerty, thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you here on WDHA.
Same here. Thank you very much.